This week, we welcome Jess Byrne, Senior Analyst at Forrester Research, to discuss the golden age of email security. In the Leadership and Communications section, CISO as a business executive, 5 areas to focus on and 5 actions you can take to run cybersecurity. How to win the battle for cybersecurity budgets, mastering effective communication skills with the Dale Carnegie method, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
How do you win the race against risk and safely lock down your cloud data without hiring an army of administrators? Introducing Least Privilege Automation, only from Varonis. Varonis eliminates data exposures while your employees work and while they sleep, making intelligent decisions about who needs access to data and who doesn't. Our cloud-native solution analyzes permissions and sharing links, monitors access activity, and classifies sensitive data. Because Varonis knows who can and who does access critical data, our automation safely remediates risky links and permissions. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Varonis. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 311, recorded July 10th, 2023. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining remotely are my co-hosts for this week. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Hey, Jason.
Had a good time off for July 4th. And I'm getting ready to go out to Alaska at the end of this week. So I'll be out on the Alaska frontier here for about 12 days.
Yes, you and I are both.
You're going to be the only one around cold.
I'm going to be a little.
You're going to be only cold guys.
In your home country.
Oh, that's right.
Where?
You're going to Portugal.
I'm going to Portugal.
Yeah, I'm jealous, man. I am so jealous.
Also joining us this week, Mr. Josh Marpet. Welcome, Josh. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. Pleasure. Thank you. A little bit last minute, but hey, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it was all last minute today. Tyler got hurt playing soccer. Ben had a house emergency, so Josh is kind of pinch hitting for us today. Join us at an upcoming official cybersecurity summit in a city near you. This series of one-day, invitation-only executive-level conferences are designed to educate senior cyber professionals on the latest threat landscape. We are pleased to offer our listeners $100 off admission when you use code SECWEEK23 to register. Visit securityweekly.com/cybersecurity summit to learn more and register today. Jess Byrne is no stranger to this show. She is a senior analyst at Forrester Research, serving security and risk professionals. She contributes to Forrester's research on the role of the CISO and Zero Trust. Additionally, Jess covers email security, which is our topic today, incident response and crisis management, and security training, education, and certifications, which falls into my realm. Prior to her analyst role, Jess spent 8 years as a principal advisor on Forrester's Security and Risk Council. Jess, welcome back to Business Security Weekly.
I am so glad you decided to have me back. Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Well, so for the record, you've been on the show, but I missed the last one because I was out and Adrian filled in. So I didn't even get to talk to you about the topic we had prepped for.
Yeah, I know. That was, gosh, what was that, last fall? It was great to see Adrian, of course, but you were missed.
Thank you. All right, we're going to talk email security. So I labeled this segment the golden age of email security. And usually that's a good thing. But having been in the industry as long as I have, and we still struggle with email security, I'm not sure how good that is.
All right, well, I suppose it's all relative. But the reason that I said in my recent Forrester wave that we're in or entering a golden age of email security is because there's never been more activity around email security. It was really sort of a stagnant market for about 10 years with just the traditional SEGs sort of dominating the market. But now we've seen lots of mergers and acquisitions. We've seen a rise of an entirely new industry or market of email security vendors that are all based on leveraging APIs, right? So we call them CAPEs, cloud-based API-enabled email security vendors. And then we saw some of those legacy players and folks who were never involved in email security before snap them up in the last 24 months. And they're actually really making hay with it. So I really think that there's more choice for enterprises and other organizations than ever before. So to me, this is spurring this golden age of the segs having to keep up and everybody having to innovate on a problem that has just been plaguing all of us for 20 years or more.
And some new and really a new entrant into the market that I think is making some major disruptions, and that's Microsoft, right? Microsoft, as part of their E5 contracts, is also disrupting the email security space and other spaces, by the way, at the same time. So the traditional players who are in the security email gateway stuff have had to continue to innovate, also add stuff to their portfolio, which we'll talk about in a second, all because Microsoft is also coming at them in a unique and different way as well.
Oh, absolutely. Microsoft's coming for everyone, right? In every category of the security, or every layer of the security tech stack. But for email, there has definitely been a push for consolidation to the native capabilities of Defender for Office, right? That's included in the E5 license. And we see a lot of the customer references that I spoke to taking them up on that. And in some cases, that has meant bad news for the traditional secure email gateways, forcing them, again, in this golden age, to innovate and come up with new ways to connect, more cost-effective ways to remain part of someone's overall email security program. So Microsoft's really spurred some interesting innovation, some interesting partnerships. And they used to be someone that the CAPES vendors and traditional segs could say, not good enough. I really can't tell you that that's necessarily the case before, but we can talk in a minute about, I think, how people are approaching email security when it comes to layering. And I think that makes all the difference when it comes to working with Microsoft and others.
So Jess, when you did this research, what was the criteria for entry into this group that you evaluated? And then what criteria did you actually evaluate them on?
Well, so the wave itself had 26 criteria. So we had some strategy offerings. We wanted to know about their vision. We wanted to know about their roadmap. We wanted to know about their commercial models. We wanted to know about how they give back to the overall security community. And then for current offerings, we looked at some of the standard email security criteria, like malicious email filtering, malware, URLs. If they had security awareness and training built in and how seamless that was, if they had DLP, encryption, other outbound forms of email security. And then some of the newer entrants to this year's wave, the last time we did this was in 2021, were things around analyst experience, right? Does a security analyst to do an investigation have to hop from one console to another? Do they have to hop between different systems? How intuitive is it? How easy is it for them to complete their task, especially if it comes to a malicious email that might need to be clawed back in some way? And then also we looked at product security, right? This is a big thing right now. You have to secure what you sell. So I think that caught some folks off guard. I think people do actually in this space do a good job with it. But those are some of the things that Forrester is really trying to hit home that we want enterprises and security leaders to look at. How easy is it for your team to do their job based on the tools that they're given? And then how secure is it? Is a product that you're bringing into your enterprise? So all of that factored in, plus more when it came to the criteria this year. And then the organizations had to be over a certain revenue threshold, had to operate within 3 or more geographies. And then we have something called Forrester Mindshare, which is, am I getting asked about these vendors by our Forrester clients?
That's great. I love the fact that you're including things like user experience, economies of scale, and operational efficiencies. And then ultimately that leads to adoption of the technology and the ability to actually use it successfully. So I love the fact that that's a criteria, and obviously foundational security for the product itself. That's awesome that those are included.
Yeah, it's something you're going to see on a lot of Forrester waves moving forward. It's something we feel really strongly about.
So I've got a question for you, Jess. Josh Marpet, pleasure. It's interesting, but some of the criteria that you stated, I'm playing devil's advocate here, forgive me, are a little exclusionary. for example, the ease for an analyst to use it, I love that. Don't get me wrong, but in that sense, you're also pushing Microsoft to the head of the curve because obviously, if I can do it all within one console, it's fantastic. So, and I'm not saying that's what you did. I'm giving that as an example of how that can potentially sort of warp the curve, if you know what I'm saying. So, what I'm going to ask is, are there any of those criteria that if you could, you'd actually remove to add that one company that you're like, God, I wish we could put them in there?
Interesting. I don't know if I would remove the one thing that I'm looking at that I'm probably going to remove the next time is around deployment options, right? Because I no longer really care how you do it. I actually don't think people should even be offering on-prem appliances or devices anymore, given how vulnerable everything is. And we've actually seen some of that happen with one of the players in this particular wave. Their on-prem appliance wasn't evaluated, but their cloud-based SEG and CAPE solution was. I think now we have to move beyond that. I don't know if that will exclude or include anybody, but I will say about
I love that. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, but the analyst experience piece, you can see that in some of the XDR players that are in this game, right? How easy is it for you to move within that platform? How many jumps do you have to make to just do a simple investigation? The more you can actually do in the email security console or interface itself is where people got better scores. And you can see some of the legacy folks who have made acquisitions and created new modules over and over again didn't actually score that well, and they know it, and they have some work to do to actually fix that up for their customers, because their customers said loud and clear, we can't do this many clicks, we can't go through these many consoles to get our jobs done. So I think that's going to be a real push in the next couple of years before we do this wave again. I'm sure we'll see more improvement in this space.
And Jess, to be honest with you, as I read through the report, Microsoft actually got dinged for a couple of those places where ease of use around dashboards and reporting across their tool sets wasn't a great experience. So if I remember correctly, I think Microsoft actually got dinged for some of that.
Yeah, they did. And a lot of that came from, we did almost 40 customer reference interviews. And in some cases, especially with folks who are using multiple solutions, I may have asked about one. They may have been a reference for one, but I got feedback on many of the infrastructure providers, regardless of whether I asked for it or not. So yes, there were some issues with reporting and dashboards not being helpful enough. And, I was looking at reporting and dashboards that could actually be filtered all the way up to a CISO level. Would it contribute to actionable metrics that CISOs would be putting in front of executives or boards? And so those are the questions I was asking the end user customers. And yeah, some of that feedback wasn't perfect.
Yeah, after all, they did fall in the leader category along with Proofpoint, Cloudflare, and I think Checkpoint as well. From that analysis, what really set apart those leaders from the strong performers and the contenders? What were those, golden nuggets that really set, those four companies apart?
Yeah, a lot of it was around them actually having a point of view on the future of this market. In the case of some of them, it was around making very interesting acquisitions. In the case of Cloudflare and Checkpoint, they went from zero to a leader in the wave based on the acquisitions of those CAPE providers that they did in the last 18 months. So Checkpoint acquired Avanan, Cloudflare acquired Area 1, and then adding that into the mix of everything else that they had to offer was multiplicative. So it was actually really beneficial. You're able to do really some really interesting things. For some of these, like a Cloudflare, some of their dashboarding really set them apart. For Checkpoint, it was your unique inline CAPES deployment option, one of the more interesting and novel ones that were out there that I felt was really a great way of looking at email security. It brings the best of CAPES and SEGs together. And then Proofpoint's really making some interesting strides. They made an interesting acquisition with a company called Elusive that is all about identity threat, because account takeover has to be factored in heavily into email security now, because you're going to get emails from legitimate accounts that it's going to be very difficult to tell if this is actually someone who's taken over this account, as opposed to just looking for a spoof. So if you're looking around identity intelligence, I think it's going to be a lot easier to spot account takeovers and shut those accounts down and remediate faster. So I liked how people were looking forward and thinking about all of the elements that go into a comprehensive email security program.
Yeah, and some of the things I noticed as well, and maybe you can speak a little bit to it, is those leaders also focused on not just email, building out what I'd call maybe collaboration tool protection, right, for messaging and collaboration tools and file sharing and things of that nature. So it made me happy to see that these traditional email security companies are starting to think beyond email and really look at all the collaboration tools that we use today.
Yeah, I think it's critical. I know that our clients aren't asking about it, but I've been beating the drum about the fact that I know you think Teams and Slack are closed environments, but again, due to the prevalence of account takeovers, they're not, right? There's easy ways to get in there, especially when you're connected with supply chain partners and contractors and other customers that are into your workflows. It's important to protect the way people work overall. And that means file sharing, that means chat, that means video calls, all of that. So, I think the next time I do this, which will be in 2025, we're going to name it Enterprise Collaboration and Communication vendors. We're going to think about it more than just email security, because it's really becoming that. And there was just a vulnerability in Teams the other day that was exploited, where people were able to go in and I don't know if they were successful, but almost, conduct things like business email compromise. People don't think about, they're not as vigilant when it comes to Teams and Slack as they are with email. They've been taught to be vigilant with email. They trust anything that comes across their Teams screen as somebody that they know. So this is a new frontier.
And it's leveraging the control that you have, right? Because, so many organizations look at email security and they put on things like in the Microsoft stack, the safe links and the safe attachments. But in their collaboration tool Teams, they're not turning those controls on. You have those controls available where you have safe links and safe attachments, right?
Yeah.
And then open federation. I mean, so many organizations want to collaborate freely. They have open federation and they can get messages from any organization out there. So looking at those security controls and really, really hardening them down.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to become more and more important.
I'm going to let Josh get in here because I have a line of questioning on strategy in a minute, kind of on the future. But Josh, come on in.
I have a couple of things, actually. Thank you. One is that, Jess, have you seen the screenshots where people broke into a company and they were actually on the incident Slack or incident Teams, rather, where the defenders were discussing what they were doing, and the criminals were going, no, that's not what we did. Try this. It was hilarious.
Wow.
Yeah, so Teams and Slack are not necessarily, as you said, you put it absolutely perfectly, they're not necessarily the best ways to communicate securely. They are fantastic if set up properly, but they can be hacked just as easily as email in certain circumstances.
Yeah, and you need backup out-of-band secure communications for incidents, right? That has to be in place. You can't be discussing everything that's happening. You have to assume someone's watching.
Actually, I was going to point that out. I think you should add that out-of-band communication if you're going to expand this in 2025. I think you said. I would expand this to include out-of-band communication as an emergency or mass notification, incident response communication, anything like that. I would include that in there. And if you need anybody, I can point you in a few directions.
On secure. My colleague Heidi Shea actually does a wave on secure communication, and so there's some really interesting vendors that are part of that, and many of them do the out-of-band. But yeah, it could be an interesting criteria to add for 2025.
And also, since Proofpoint acquired Elusive, which is a deception vendor, and they're rebranding it, but they're effectively a deception vendor. It's fascinating that they're really going into red herring identity deception as a primary component or a significant component of their email protection and moving into the identity protection as well. I like what you said. It makes total sense. I was just backing you up.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, they're also coming out with some more supply chain detection, supply chain compromise detection, because again, this is where the bulk of business email compromise comes from, rerouting invoices to conduct wire transfer fraud between companies that do business all the time. So if you're able to tell that one of your organizations is compromised, Checkpoint is able to do this too. That alert goes out, and you're able to put extra controls and extra vigilance around working with specific companies that are in your supply chain. And I think that's huge from a number of perspectives, and a great move.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the future of email security, because there's been some interesting strategies, right? We had some kind of standalone players, the API security vendors, the business email compromise players. You're starting to see them get acquired by some of the larger players, right? The larger players have taken a couple different tacks in their strategy. Some have gone down the security awareness training, phishing simulation, tied into phishing incident response, etc. Others, like Checkpoint, and have come into this market. You've got the Elusive on the identity side. Like, we see this huge consolidation pressure right now in the industry, Jess. So the question becomes, like, what's the future of this market look like? How much more gets consolidated with these email security vendors? Who potentially enters this space because they have some adjacency capabilities that are like, where does this go from here? Because there's been some interesting moves, but it's like, what's next?
Yeah, this is interesting. So I was really surprised when I conducted these customer reference interviews. And again, I did 37 of them. And of the 37 customer reference interviews that I did, all but 2 were using more than one email security solution for one piece of functionality or another. The biggest number was 4 different layers of email security, but most folks were using 2 or 3. And that typically means an email infrastructure, native capabilities like Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and then a CAPES vendor or a SEG. So we saw a lot of folks using Microsoft and Abnormal Security, for example. And that was interesting to me because, there's a big consolidation play. I think the infrastructure folks would like to capture all of that functionality and wallet share when it comes to email security. But there's a peace of mind element that came out loud and clear from these customers that they're just not willing to go with one single point of failure, to be honest. At this point, there's peace of mind in having different layers of security to catch these increasingly sophisticated emails, and they're only going to get more so with generative AI. So I don't think that there's going to be a budget problem in the near future for email security specifically. That might be true for other tech categories, but CISOs will tell me they'll do an efficacy test and say, with 1 layer, too much gets through, X percentage gets through. With 2, with 3, we're down to, 1.1, percent of malicious emails getting through. So it's pretty easy to make a business case right now to continue to work with tried and true vendors, or to take a chance and work with some of these startups that are coming up that are really helping with things like BEC and advanced phishing emails. So I think we're going to continue to see that. And I think we're going to see more and more integration with XDR platforms. We're seeing that happening, with folks like Trend Micro. I think, Cisco just made an interesting acquisition of Armor Blocks that I think is going to really help their email security solution moving forward. And I think MDR players are going to start to get into this space too, because they want to manage the triage. They actually want to manage some of the response to email security. I know I've been getting questions from some of those providers, some of the more startup focused newer providers, about how do we get in on email. So I think there's a lot that's going to happen again before I do this wave in 2025.
Yeah, and that's before we talk about some of the collaboration components. When I talk to CISOs, the number one problem they have that they can't solve for is smishing, right? The SMS-based text messaging, which is kind of an out-of-band communication mechanism. I don't necessarily have much control over SMS-based because it's on these individual devices I don't own. That's a huge challenge. I wonder how that fits in, because we not only do you hear about phishing and vishing, now you hear about smishing attacks. Like, how does that play into an email security provider and as part of a collaboration play?
Right now, all I'm seeing from these providers is awareness and training efforts around smishing and vishing to various levels of success or accurate simulation. Most folks can't do smishing because they don't have enough burner numbers to actually conduct these tests. And also there are privacy issues around sending some of these emails to a device that's actually owned by the employee, where only a portion of it is managed by their organization. So there's issues there. So all we're seeing right now are how to be vigilant against smishing and vishing. There's some vishing testing that is more accurate when it comes to an email that contains a voicemail message or record. But again, it's still not quite the same as some of those multi-pronged attacks that you're seeing where an actual person is leaving an actual voicemail. We're not seeing a lot of realistic testing around that right now. So this will be interesting. I feel like there might be new entrants to this market that might get acquired. But right now, I actually think it's kind of Wild West and a little bit scary. There's not a lot people are offering.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge. I hear from a lot of our CISOs in my conversations. It's like the one thing they can't control, and they want a solution there. I'm just curious, whether the email security and collaboration providers are close to that. It sounds like no, it's more like a phishing simulation. So the phishing simulation vendors, which, by the way, are also some of the email security vendors,
Right.
are the closest we have today.
That's what I'm seeing. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
What's the future of I mean, I don't want to go too far down this path, but Microsoft is so disruptive, right? We started a little bit with the Microsoft story, but as Microsoft continues to improve capabilities and offer more and more holistic solutions, how big of a threat are they in this space to well-established vendors?
Well, I think many of us in the analyst community, especially at Forrester, call them an existential threat to most security technology vendors. So it's going to be about how to play well with them, how to add value on top of whatever it is that they're offering, like many of these CAPES vendors do. You can see partnerships, even co-marketing partnerships between folks like Abnormal Security and Microsoft. And it's about offering services or, other components that they don't have or are not putting a lot of effort into right now. To me, when it comes to email security specifically, it's going to be about functionality share and kind of, winning over using the most of your capabilities and being as sticky as possible to remain a layer on top of Microsoft as an infrastructure. I'm also saying to many of our email security vendors, don't ignore Google Workspace as well. There's an opportunity there. They serve pretty large industries to act as an additional layer on top of Google as well. And I saw in many of the roadmaps for email security vendors that Google was later on down the path. And I think there's definitely monetary opportunity to go with Google as well. And, if Microsoft stops playing nice at some point, you may want to make sure that you have your Google Workspace layers of security in line.
Yes, definitely good advice. Josh, Jason, any additional questions for Jess while we have her?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about what makes these vendors successful and what's put them in the leaders quadrant. But what are some of these vendors who's fallen off of the leader space and the strong performer space? What do they have to start focusing on? Otherwise, they're going to get left behind. I see some of these organizations in the challenger space that have kind of fallen off. What do they have to start thinking about? Otherwise, they're going to be completely kicked out of the space.
Yeah, it's funny with waves. We do them, every 18 to 24 months. And in some cases, when you evaluate them, in the last wave, some of the things that some of the folks that have fallen off were doing were very novel. But then there wasn't additional progress after that, right? So you can't stand still, especially with a Microsoft breathing down your neck. You have to make sure that you're continually innovating, that your roadmap is addressing all of the things that we know that customers need even before that they need them. Things like collaboration security, which again, hard to get the message across to enterprises. I think it will be easier very soon, but it's not standing still. And I think in some cases that sort of happened with some of these folks. And I think their roadmaps look great, but some of those things their competitors already are out with. And I think, you need to stay ahead of customer needs in this space. And again, there's never been a better time to be innovative with email security. And you have people's attention, you have people's budgets as opposed to other categories. So it's really keeping pace with emerging customer needs.
Josh, I heard you pop in there one last time. I want to make sure you get your question.
Yeah. So I think that I'm going to go back to the point about analyst ease of use, if you will. I'm probably misremembering the title, but you get the idea. How do you think, and I mean, Google is already doing this with Vertex AI in their security tools, but how do you think AI is going to change the ease of use category or any other categories?
Yeah, I think AI, especially things like with large language models and generative AI, is going to change the investigation process. If people can actually really understand how to be good prompt engineers, they could get more information when they're doing investigations more quickly and in a more understandable way. So, and I also think AI and machine learning is already changing the nature of awareness and training. Many of these email solutions are able to turn on a dime and take an attack that actually came through the organization and create a simulation and test the rest of the organization on it quickly. There's going to be detections for generative AI used to write phishing emails. So it's going to be the real ML on ML or AI on AI battle, especially in email security. But with analyst experience specifically, it's going to be about, again, the quickness with which an analyst can investigate and triage a reported malicious email or an alert that's come in, and make sure that they can either claw back those emails or take the appropriate response quickly.
Yeah, AI
Well
is
said.
going to shake some things up. There is some good research coming out of Forrester on AI, so we might have somebody back on the show to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Jess,
We've got some
thank you
research.
so much.
Thank you. We've got some research
Yeah.
coming up on Microsoft too that you'll have us back for. I hope.
That's the one I want to bring you back for. Jess, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks so much for having me again.
We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.